I'm so anxious. I had such a difficult week.
Mm.
Can't focus on anything.
Yeah, I can see it looks like you're feeling really agitated, Shona, and I wonder if, if it would help just to start the session, just for us to take a few breaths together and just drop into your body before we kind of start. What do you think?
No, no, sorry. I've done breathing before and it didn't work. Please do not ask me to the breathing again. This therapy, I really need this therapy to work. I need something helpful. You are my last hope. I've waited for this therapy for 2 years. I really need it to work. Please do not breathing. I've tried it before many times. No, no, I need something real.
Yeah. Okay, now that really makes sense to me. That really makes sense. And I'm so glad that you've kind of able to say that to me and just be kind of really upfront about that. And Shona, I can really feel how urgent this is for you. I'm really getting that, how exhausted you are, how fed up you are with kind of trying and waiting and hoping that someone will see what you need, and then just kind of feeling like you've just been told to do something. And I can see you've worked so hard and you've kind of followed instructions, and suggestions, and it hasn't helped in the way that you hoped. And I can see that must be incredibly
Um,
painful and lonely for you. Am I
it
getting
just
that
feels
right?
like I'm there for everyone else all the time, and no one is ever for me.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me when I think about the story you've told me about your life, the things that have happened to you. That makes sense why you would be feeling so frustrated and so desperate to try and get the right kind of help. And I can't help but wonder if there's a deeper story here, one that started long ago before the therapy, before you even kind of started in therapy. Maybe there was a time when kind of people only helped you when you were kind of physically unwell or kind of in crisis, or when things were, when things got really desperate. And when they did help, it was kind of just practical solutions. It was kind of just do this, or just sort yourself out, or just try this or try that. That no one has really asked how you felt. No one kind of sat with you in your pain. No one tried to really connect with you and really get what was going on for you. Does that kind of fit at all for you?
I don't know what you mean by anything else. What else should they give me? The
Right.
practical support, the my mom and dad and granny. Yeah, they did that. I don't know what else should
Yeah.
they give to me. I don't know what
Okay.
you mean.
Yeah. And I think what you're raising there is such an important point, because in a sense we don't know what we haven't had, and for you, you knew you were loved in the sense that your mom and your dad and your granny did do practical things for you sometimes, and that was kind of how they showed, that was their language of how they showed their care for you, that how they showed how you knew maybe you were loved at those times at some level. But I guess what I'm talking here more about is really feeling seen, really feeling understood, really feeling like there's someone who gets you in a way that is beyond just helping you with stuff or giving you solutions, but really someone to really understand you and get you at a deeper level. Um, and I'm just wondering, I mean, does that resonate at all? This part of
Mm,
you say to me sometimes, people don't get me, people don't understand me, people don't see me.
mhm.
And I really feel like you're saying something quite important when you raise that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I wonder if it would help to think about the drama triangle. I said I would kind of bring that up with you at some point, so now might be a good time to have a little look at that. And so I'm just going
Okay.
to share my screen if that's okay. And uh, save on current slide. There we go. And can you see this triangle here? I'm just putting
Yes.
this up just to kind of. This is a really interesting, I guess, dynamic that can help us to make sense of our families. And most families spend some time on this dynamic. So we're not just talking about, one family here. It's a very common pattern that we find ourselves on. And it can just be invisible. It's just kind of almost happens behind the scenes. And what it does is it blocks closeness. And most of us don't realize we're even on the triangle. It just kind of is happening in the background. It is what we know and what we're familiar with. So we have 3 points on this triangle. The kind of on the top left, this kind of persecutor role. On the top right, the rescuer role, and in the bottom, this kind of what's called the victim role. And different modes, or the different modes we've talked about, will appear at different points on the triangle. So, for example, we might have when we think about your childhood, you spent a lot of time and you learned to be, I think you were very much valued from what you've said to me by being in the rescuer role. So, in a kind of a compliant surrenderer kind of role where you were taking care of others, you were sacrificing yourself, you were thinking about what mum needed, you were thinking about what your sisters and brothers needed, and you were very much kind of valued and shown a lot of care in response to, or a lot of praise around doing that job. So that in a sense, you've kind of been cast. If we think about this as a play or a drama that's happening on a stage, you were cast without having any say in it or really even knowing what was happening. You were cast in that role of the kind of rescuer, and then the people that you were looking after, maybe mum, who was kind of feeling like she was struggling, like she couldn't do everything on her plate, couldn't manage her relationship with her husband, feeling kind of helpless and hopeless, and like bad things were happening to her. That your role was kind of to make things better for her, make her feel better, make your siblings feel better. Your job was kind of the peacekeeper. Would that fit?
It would.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
but of course, none of us stay on where we are, so we all tend to move around the triangle. But the persecutor is the person who maybe gets angry, and they might get angry in a kind of more lashing out kind of way, or it might like an angry child mode, or maybe more of a bully attack mode. So when you're at school, for example, the bullies would come into that role of being kind of putting you down, making you feel bad about yourself, criticizing you, criticizing your body, and your appearance, those sorts of things. And in those moments, you felt helpless, and you felt unable to kind of do anything, and maybe learned I'm powerless. And that in that instance, you might take on that kind of more victim position in
Mhm.
that in that in that the drama. Um,
'Cause I was a victim, wasn't I?
So in that situation, of course, absolutely. But what can happen is that then we get stuck in those roles, that we actually forget even when we're out of the situation where we're being bullied or being when we literally are helpless, and that would be your inner child part that literally was helpless at those times. We then learn that almost as a role that we can't get out of it. That we learn that actually, and this comes back to talking about when you were ill or when you were physically unwell and your mum could see your vulnerability, she could see you were struggling, that's when she might have flipped into rescuer. And at those times, they might have been one of the very few times that you had someone taking care of you. That might be the only language that you learnt, or the only way that you learned that other people could show you care. And I noticed that sometimes um, in our sessions that there's this side of you that maybe is stuck in that role, that maybe says to me, uh you know can I need more strategies, I need you to tell me, I need you to make this right, I need you to fix me, I need you to and I wonder if at those times it's almost like that old story replaying on the drama triangle, where you've learned that the only time I ever feel cared about is if somebody gives me practical care. If somebody, I have to almost show my inside, my vulnerable child on the outside through being physically ill or not. And that's not kind of saying in any way that you're putting it on or making it up. It's just that that's kind of an old story that's still alive in your mind, and that's the only way you could feel cared about as a child. But if, for example, generally, if you're in rescue, and this is something you've said to me earlier in today's session, is, you know, I'm sick of being the one that gives to everyone else, and no one else kind of gives me what I need. And, that's a very real frustration. I wonder if that's partly because people aren't giving you the kind of the care that you really need, because you don't really need the fix-it care. Your inner child, your vulnerable part, needs to be seen, to be heard, to be connected, and not to get that kind of practical care from other people, not to have to earn and show how worthy you are by being ill or being helpless. And I wonder if sometimes that frustration that you feel in those moments that leads you to withdraw a little bit, to pull back, to kind of almost feels sometimes at those moments a little bit maybe like angry or annoyed or frustrated, that in those moments maybe you're temporarily visiting the persecutor part of the triangle, where you're just feeling like, this is just so frustrating. People aren't hearing what I'm saying, and you pull back. And in those moments, I get a little, maybe tiny feeling of the anger and the frustration that lie underneath. Um, so, does that kind of resonate at all for you? I wonder, in terms of your early childhood and the parts that you were kind of cast as without any real choice or even awareness, and how that sometimes might play out in our relationship.
So you're saying that I'm all of them.
I think we're all of them at times. And it's the key is to understanding how that looks for us, for our own families, and helping, and it helps us to understand how we can ask for what we need, and how we can know what we need, how in a deeper way. So once we notice that there's this rescuer side of me that tries to get maybe care through taking care of other people, it tries to feel connected to people by taking care of them. There's this maybe helpless surrenderer part of me that we've talked about on the victim part of the triangle that's learned I have to be helpless if people are going to take care of me. I have to kind of almost show that I'm helpless and powerless, and not be assertive, not stick up for myself, because otherwise I get other people see me as the persecutor, and then they might there might be
Still don't like me.
they don't like me anymore. Yeah. So you didn't have any real choice as a child except to take up these roles. It was the only, you had to take up the roles that were missing in your family, or the roles that were expected of you. The problem is we don't know this story is going on in our head until we talk about it and find ways to come off the triangle, where we can find other ways of connecting with your little self who isn't on this triangle. She's she's still waiting to be seen and connected with, um, and to be understood, in the way that she deserves. Does that make sense?
A little bit. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah,
Because I know you're not my mother, though.
right. Part of you knows that. And yet there's a kind of a drama that plays out in all of our lives as humans, sometimes without us even being aware of it. And I wonder if that's something we can kind of be aware of. And I don't hope you don't mind me maybe bringing this up. But sometimes when you ask me to fix things for you, and when you kind of tell me that you're looking for something to fix how you feel, I feel a pressure to perform. I kind of feel like I'm being pulled into that rescuer position to solve it fast. And then sometimes I feel a little bit disheartened or like I failed when it doesn't land. And I wonder if that's a familiar feeling for you too, like people jumping in to help but missing the part of you. And I wonder if at those times when I maybe do give you strategies, I'm missing the mark there. I'm not getting to the part of you that's really hurting. The part that's looking for a tool or a quick fix is maybe that kind of helpless surrenderer, but there's a part underneath that kind of is like, yeah, but what about me? I don't want to fix. I don't want to be fobbed off with a solution or breathing technique. I want to be seen and understood. I want Susan to see me. What do you think? Does that?
It sounds strange.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can imagine.
I don't know what else can I say to get help.
Yeah,
If that's what I'm saying is not what is working, so I don't know what else can I do.
yeah, yeah, of course, of course. And maybe that's something we can work on together. And I'm so pleased that you're even, allowing our conversation to go this way, because I think it's really sometimes painful to see these patterns and see how these things play out. And I wonder if kind of moving forward, when I offer a technique and it doesn't hit the mark, I want you to know it's not you that's kind of unfixable. It's that what you need isn't a tool. You don't need tools or strategies. What you need is something deeper. You need connection. We all do as humans, and safety, and to be with someone who won't change you or rush you in any way. There's this little part of you that's been overlooked and fobbed off with strategies again and again, and even in therapy. And I don't want that little part of you to suffer any longer. And we can maybe spend more time talking about the feelings and the struggles, and maybe give that little part of you a sense of being seen and understood, which is really what every little child needs.
Hmm.